the argument against it, we talked about this on What Chaos, is so disingenuous when you say, oh, okay, well, so if a guy wins game 6, has a shutout in game 6, you're not going to start him in game 7 because it's the other goalie's turn. That's not what rotating goalies is like, even in the regular season.
Exactly, right? That's what I don't get.
You're making up how a goalie rotation works, which is it's not a 50-50 split. You ride the hot hand, and if a goalie isn't letting up any goals, if a guy has a Tuukka Rask 2013 Eastern Conference Final, yeah, I think he's probably starting game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat on CLNS Media. My name is Evan Marinofsky, and today I am joined by the great DJ Bean. DJ, what is up?
Hi, pal. How are you? It's great to be on Bruins Beat.
It is. It has been a while. It's been a long time. It has been too long.
Begging you to come on, and you never asked me to come on this podcast, and that rubs me the wrong way. But I'm glad that finally you've asked me.
Well, it was a long time coming. What happened was, Conor and I would just do it every week, and then this winter, I told you back in the fall, I was like, we're doing 2 a week. One's going to be with someone other than Conor, and so I was like, obviously you'll be in the rotation for it. So, yeah, and you are doing everything right now with What Chaos, the new podcast with you and Pete. It's been great. You guys talked to Ullmark and Swayman the other day, and it's been enlightening to say the least.
Yeah, we've been accused a couple of times of being a Bruins podcast. We're not, just because we have had 3 Bruins players and 1 former Bruins player, but whatever. We talk about Oilers most of the time. Today we talked about the Kraken a bunch, and we talked about the Wild and the Canucks. I will say, I'm just like off the Eastern Conference. I'm all Western Conference now. Only games I watch. Love the Western Conference.
Well, it's exciting. You got the Canucks, who are a fun team. The Knights are still nasty. The Avalanche are great. Like, I feel like you have all these different teams, and it's just, the Ducks are good. When you talk to Frank Vetrano, like, the Ducks have been outstanding.
The Pacific really is where it's at. You mentioned the Avalanche for a second, and I was like, we don't really, not that Western Conference. The cool, crazy Western Conference.
It's the hip, the Ducks and the Kings. Yeah. It's hip, It's
the Flames
are
having
happening.
So much fun out there. Everything's
so much fun.
Yeah, like the Sharks are cool. We were at the NHL store the other day in New York, and I almost had them make me a Mackenzie Blackwood jersey.
Ooh,
would have been ridiculous. And
I should have went with Mario Ferraro.
Yeah, there's some good options.
Yeah, so many star-studded names with the Sharks. Yeah, I mean, obviously with them, they were hot for a minute there. 2 straight wins. To me, the most exciting regular season game of the year has been that Sharks-Oilers game. That was, to me, and what a year for the Woodcroft family, by the way. You got Jay, who has just been fired on, out in Edmonton.
Started a winning streak.
He did.
He got them that first win.
He did, the start of the new era.
Yeah.
It's funny though. I feel like what now that you're focusing on the entirety of the NHL, I remember you always saying to me that you consistently would watch almost every game or every game what you could, you were always watching hockey. And I feel like this fits you well, kind of just doing everything about everything in the NHL.
Yeah, especially when the Bruins wouldn't make the playoffs, I would get to do sit on the couch, grab some beer or whatever your vice may be, and that's what you're doing for the next. This sounds depressing, borderline morbid, but that's what you're doing for the next couple of months. Just watching.
But a lot of people do that. It's not depressing.
Yeah, and I don't really drink these days, so it's just I sit on my couch with Chex Mix instead, and just last night I bet on the Ducks to force myself to not watch the Oilers game. Not that I didn't want to watch the Oilers game, but I need to come up with things to make me not only watch the Oilers. So I was like, all right, I'll tap into Avalanche, Ducks. Apologies if you're trying to not date the recording of this episode. I'm very specifically noting when I was at the NHL store this day, that will be clearly that day. But yeah, I'm trying to watch it all. Pete's better at paying attention and only watching parts of games, but still seeing the whole thing. I'm kind of learning how to do that, but
Well, he has like 100 TVs, and he's been doing it forever. That's the other thing. Is
that's like he invented watching hockey that way, so he doesn't have a problem doing it.
When I sit down, I want to watch a full game. Like Wednesday night, I was watching that Oilers Kraken game until I had to go to my men's league hockey game, and I'm like, oh, I wish I could see the ending to this. But I had to go, dangle, snipe, and selly on my own. So I mean,
whoa, you had to get your Evander Kane on.
I wouldn't go that far, but I did have to suit up and play a game of my own. But anyways, why don't we dive into some Bruins stuff? Because you're still very in the mix for Bruins. I get right, exactly. We have to. It's an obligation with the name of the show that we do have to hit on this. 12-1-2, best team in hockey again. What have been your first impressions, and where are you at with the Bruins right now? What's DJ's take?
I think that we were right about what we said about the Bruins 2 years ago, but we just said it the wrong year. They'll be a little worse, but they'll still probably be in good shape. We said that about the 2022-23 Bruins, and I think that we meant to say it about this team because they are a little worse than the best team ever, but they're still really good. And my thing going in, which was a little optimistic perhaps, was they have a big hole on their roster, which is center, and that's a huge hole, and it's not the hole that you want to have on your roster, but it is the only hole on their roster, and there aren't many teams that only have one hole on their roster. There will be, they don't really have anything on the wing, and also their goaltending's a question mark. Like that's the type of way you talk about teams, and there was never going to be a question of goaltending. There was maybe some like first world problem questions you could ask on defense, but not really. You could wonder how they would recover from a group at wing that lost a really good player in Taylor Hall, but ultimately it was going to be they don't really have centers. They still don't really have like great centers. We've just learned that they kind of have actual centers. Zacha has slotted in way better than I thought he would. None of us were talking about Matty Poitras, but hell, now we are. That's
correct.
And not only has Charlie Coyle been good in his role, I think they found him such a good group for him and the way that he plays. I love James van Riemsdyk, not just because I went to UNH. He's just been such a fun career to follow because he's the best player who at times isn't always the best player or doesn't always have the
that's
best
a
game.
Great way to put it. That's a great way to put someone like him. I like that.
And I don't know, like maybe he'd be offended by hearing that, but I think that any fans who are ever frustrated with him were like the not mad, disappointed thing of you are so good and there's no question about it. But whether it's a player of that size, we know that power forwards, and Van Riemsdyk is power forward-y at times.
Is it like, are you talking like a Chris Kunitz type, like that second level-ish, who's just really good all the time?
But like we know with players of his size, whether the mental motor could always be there, and like that's what a player like Milan Lucic was like. Like the want and the desire always there, more so even than other players. But physically, it's hard to make that motor go 82 games a year, and you will have nights where someone say like, "Damn, that's such a good player. Why didn't they have any shots on goal?" or something like that. And getting James van Riemsdyk for 1 year and $1 million, heaven for me. Like I don't own any Bruins jerseys. When I would get them back in the day, I would just like give them to friends. I thought about getting a James van Riemsdyk Bruins jersey because I was so happy that the Bruins had him and on a sweetheart of a deal. I know that he's out, but do have to give credit to Milan Lucic for how he started the season. I think that helped this team believe that, oh no, we're not just the guys of yesteryear and some veteran scrubs. We are a really good team. I think that him starting strong helped with that. Van Riemsdyk slotting in the way that he has helped that. Trent Frederick, I mentioned that Coyle line. Great in that role. They've got a real proper checking line, even though it's sometimes deployed as a second line. Our their centers, David Krejci and Patrice Bergeron, or even Carl Soderberg, Chris Kelly. No, but there hasn't been a swing they took, other than maybe Kevin Shattenkirk at points, where you're like, bad swing. And even the swings they took were so cheap that could you even call it a swing?
That's what I was going to say. They're not really swings. I mean, you even look back to this offseason, and there was, obviously a lot of outrage when they didn't re-sign Tyler Bertuzzi, and which obviously that now has looked like, Sweeney Masterclass at it again.
He's the GOAT.
But that freed them up to make value moves. Van Riemsdyk. Again, you mentioned on and off. Shattenkirk. Lucic. There's ones I'm forgetting, but just small, minor moves. Even throw like a Patrick Brown in there. I know a lot of people don't like Patrick Brown, but that's, just a value depth move. And you look at like Van Riemsdyk, to me, that's the most value of all, right? High, fairly high ceiling for a guy of his age at $1 million for 1 year. So that, again, I think that, and you even mentioned like the centers, right? Like, that hasn't even been that much of a hole this year.
Hasn't.
Patra stepped in. He's been a little quiet of late, but you do have to expect that with younger players. Charlie Coyle right now, last I checked, is like 3rd or 4th on the Bruins in points. Zacha is right around there too. And they play good two-way games. And I said this at the start of the year, DJ, and I don't think I said it to you, but I said it on this show. If you just look at point production, for the last 10 years, Krejci has given you anywhere from 45 to like 60, 65 points. Bergeron's been, 10 more, so 55 to 75-ish. And I kept saying, like, with who's around Zacha, if you're going to staple Pastrnak to Zacha, and if you're going to put Coyle, with whomever you put him with, is it crazy to think that the two in the aggregate sort of make up for that? And so far, they're on pace to do that. And again, I look at what those two have given you and the guys that are around them. And by the way, they're also 12-1-2 with a very, a struggling Jake DeBrusk, which I also think is a very interesting development, because that's been kind of, again, of all the surprises, I know Connor and Ty did a whole show on Bruins surprises so far this year. I think the biggest surprise is not their start, but I think it's Jake DeBrusk's slow start, because I know, right? Inconsistent in the past. I get it. He's had his struggles here. But I really thought going into a contract year with everything that, kind of the momentum that he'd been building, I thought, easy pencil Jake DeBrusk in for 30 goals this year. And he could still do it, right? 1 goal in the first, 15 games. He's streaky. I think he could do it. But so far, that's been one of my biggest surprises is, wow, you're doing all of this, and a key cog like Jake DeBrusk, again, great in his own zone, plays a good enough game around the point production to make it worth it. But I'm surprised that he's sort of struggled out of the gate a bit.
DeBrusk, not his best season. Lindholm, not his best season. McAvoy suspended. They've endured. And that's where, that's at the beginning of the season too, like there were going to be games more so this year than last year where you say, thank God I have that guy about the goaltender. And when you're winning games 4-1, no one says, thank God I have that guy. When you're winning a game 2-0, you are. And I'll put it this way, a better way, like people speak more, or people pay more attention to the goalie if it's a 2-0 shutout versus a 6-0 shutout. And the Bruins were having easier games last year because they just didn't have a single question on their roster. So there weren't too many times, even though you had the Vezina winner, that you were like, man, where would they have been without Linus Ullmark? I don't know. Probably still the President's Trophy winner with Jeremy Swayman.
Maybe not best team ever, but yes, right. President's Trophy for
probably
sure.
Still like the best team in the league. And they come back with, again, more questions in front of them, but that's fine if you have two great goaltenders. And Swayman has been awesome. And I feel like Swayman starting so strong has made people think that Ullmark hasn't started strong. There's still been games where I'm like, Ullmark was unbelievable.
Oh, even in the Buffalo game on Tuesday night. I mean, they were in the third
playing
period.
the puck.
Yeah, I thought he was going to score. I want to get into the goaltending more in depth. But first, DJ, quick word from our sponsor.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
So, we were kind of discussing goaltending there, and you were getting into it. And I think the real big difference from, last year to this year, why are the Bruins still the best team in hockey, as opposed to, why they were also the best team in hockey, arguably ever, last season, obviously up until the playoffs, is goaltending. How many games, and this is why we discussed this a lot last week when, the trade rumors were flying. You knew once Edmonton started to struggle, or if they ever did, you knew the Ullmark trade rumors would kick into high gear. But, I couldn't understand why you'd want to trade these two. I think anyone who's watched the Bruins this year, watched games consistently, would know that a lot of these games, you're winning, but you're winning because of the goaltending. And Montgomery's even said that. Like, you are winning because Swayman is stopping every high danger chance thrown at him, and he's playing the best hockey he has ever played. Ullmark has also been stopping most high danger chances and has looked, has not, skipped a beat or missed a beat from last year. So that's why I get the idea of, hey, you want to discuss trading a goalie in the offseason for a draft pick or something? Sure, we can entertain it. But right now, what a blow that would be to this whole operation.
No, you can't. If you're so strong in one area, better than anybody else, sorry, Islanders, this ain't the Islanders beat podcast. You don't go from we're the best at this thing to now we're fine kind of across the board. I don't like that idea. I like there being an answer to why will the Bruins insert whatever. Why will the Bruins win their division? Why will the Bruins be a good Stanley Cup contender? The answer is because of their goaltending. And if you take one of those guys away, you say, well, Brad Marchand is a great leader, all these things, which are all fine, but you already have those things in addition to the best goaltending in the league. So I would keep that going.
Yeah, that's why I why would you want to be like everybody else? Why would you want to go out if it was a hypothetical Ullmark for Nugent Hopkins or,
right,
middle tier potential #1 center? What is that going to do for you? You're going to score a little bit more, but come the playoffs? And the other thing is, I want to see them alternate goalies in the playoffs. I want to see them do it. I know it's unconventional, but this is an unconventional tandem, and you're not going to have a lot. You might not have a lot longer with this. So to me, I know it's November. It's a long way to the playoffs, but this team looks on track to be a legit playoff team again. I want to see them alternate goalies. Where are you on this?
They're going to. I think they're going to. I think that some lesson had to have been learned from whether it's Montgomery, Sweeney, Neely. Somebody had to have settled on, you know what? I know that back in the day, like rotating Ron Hextall and Garth Snow didn't result in a Stanley Cup, but back in the day, a lot of things were different. And we're in a new world and power plays look different. All these, there's so many changes that have been made to the game over the year. Why would you not, if both players are great, use a fresh, still engaged, locked in goaltender? And the argument against it, we talked about this on What Chaos, is so disingenuous when you say, oh, okay, well, so if a guy wins game 6, has a shutout in game 6, you're not going to start him in game 7 because it's the other goalie's turn. That's not what rotating goalies is like, even in the regular season.
Exactly, right? That's what I don't get.
You're making up how a goalie rotation works, which is it's not a 50-50 split. You ride the hot hand, and if a goalie isn't letting up any goals, if a guy has a Tuukka Rask 2013 Eastern Conference Final, yeah, I think he's probably starting game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. But if they're both playing well, you give them both games. It's not that hard. And I don't know, people are offended by it as though it's like this horrible thing that would be done to hockey. Crazy to me.
It's moving ahead. It's the game changing, and it's so interesting. Like you see I was listening to your interview with Swayman and Ullmark, which was great, by the way, on What Chaos the other day. And they rock. And it's so funny because that a lot of the hockey traditionalists who listen to that were just punching the wall. Like, oh, two goalies who like each other. This is so stupid. This can't happen. This isn't the hockey that I know. And it's like, to me, I go back to like, what's wrong with that? You have two legit starters. You have two good guys who want to play together and make each other better. And so far it's worked. I know the playoffs didn't work last year, but again, that you can put that on, Bruins management. Ullmark was fine through the first 4 games of that series. So again, I have no problem with them liking each other. I have no problem with the hug after the game. That's the other thing. Like, if you want to make the regular season more bearable and hug after a win, go for it. Do it. Like, what's wrong with that? I know I sound like such a homer, but like,
no,
I don't see the issue in that.
This didn't make the interview, but there's something to, if you lose to a team and it was a close game and you did your hardest and you really thought you gave them your best punch.
You gave it your all.
And then you're like, you know what? They're not going to want to see us again. And you look across the ice, and can you swear on this?
Yes, this is always a swearing podcast.
And those motherfuckers are hugging each other as if to be like, this is about us. It's a we thing, as they say. Like, they are on cloud 9, not sweating what you just gave them at all. I think the hugging is an intimidation maneuver as well.
Ooh,
I don't think that's why they do it. I don't think that's why they do it. But I think that if you're playing a team that beats you narrowly, and you like to think you're on their level, and you look over and they're just like hugging each other, not even thinking about like, oh, how hard was that or whatever. They're like, yeah, job well done. Give me a hug, buddy. Bank it. Let's head out.
On to the next one. What did they say to that?
So I phrased it a little confusing. I think that they thought I was talking about them hugging when they lost, so they were just like, I don't think there was like much of a reaction. I changed the subject after. This was outside of the interview anyway, though, which shows how nice those boys are for spitballing too.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
The other thing is, when it comes time for the postseason, and again, I'm sure you'll be on here more throughout the year, and we can dive into this closer to the postseason, but I look at, you're splitting guys all year, you're doing the tandem. Okay, so you get 40-something games, and then suddenly you've got to do potentially upwards of 28 games in 2 months. That's where I go, that's why you need to continue the tandem, because Ullmark showed last year and even the year before, you play him too many times in a row, you can run out of gas. Swayman could be the same thing. Like, that's the other reason why I think doing the tandem in the playoffs works too. You're just continuing what you were doing before. So again, I am all for rolling with the tandem.
I was for that, by the way. Going into the postseason, I thought they should have rotated the goalies, and obviously that became a loud refrain as the series went on, and especially after Game 5. Like, if you're doing something so well, I feel like there's no second guess. Like, there's more second guessing that was allowed by changing what you were doing than by being like, okay, well, now we do this because it's the play. It would be silly to keep doing the regular season thing. Like, I don't know. Some of those other teams seemed like they were trying pretty hard in the regular season, and you were smoking them.
That's, again, I think, that's where the traditionalists set in of, gotta go with one. And as you said, it got, the tenor on that got really loud. Was it before? I think it was before Game 5. Or no, it was after Game 5 because Ullmark gave the puck up in overtime. So goaltending's been outstanding. And again, the other thing is having two guys like that. One starts to slump, you can throw the other in and kind of let him take the bulk for a little bit and let him carry the ball. And so, again, I think that's why, I had the Bruins like third in the Atlantic before the season started. And that's not looking so hot right now because they're so good. And the rest of the Atlantic is sort of meh.
Yeah.
Meh. Very meh. Which I said before the year. I said this. I didn't expect the teams to be meh that are meh.
Like what? Lightning? Who are you talking about?
Well,
Lightning, Leafs?
The Leafs and Lightning. I thought the Lightning would, tread water for a bit without Vasilevsky, and then he'd come back mid-season. And they would kind of, cruise to the second spot. I thought the Leafs would just kind of outscore everybody and be in first. But that hasn't been the case, obviously. It's been far from it. So, yeah. What about you? What do you think of the Atlantic going into the year?
But Buffalo doesn't surprise me at all. But Buffalo, I say lovingly, was for sure the most overrated team this offseason because they're such an exciting team with such a good group of players that I think we wanted this to be the year where they took that step forward. But this is another thing we talked about on the podcast recently. Like, if they don't take that step forward this year, they'll just take it next year. They're not about to lose so many. Like, the only thing that's really changing is some veteran money comes off the books and goes to their young star defensemen, which is fine. They can afford it. They can take that hit. And next year, their young stars will be a year more experienced and they'll be better. I'm not sweating that. And it does stink that Tage Thompson's hurt, but like I'm not sweating that they didn't take that leap this year, so they're never going to do it. And who knows? Maybe they still end up making some sort of run. Detroit surprises me for sure. It should surprise everybody. They took the step. They took the step in the West. Anaheim took the step. Vancouver kind of unlocked a lot of the things that they had going on, so they finally got going. But
they always had talent on. Vancouver always had talent on that roster.
Right. It was just like, those little things that they came in like capsules and you'd pour water on them. They'd like expand and turn into dinosaurs.
Yes.
Like they were always like, we knew what those things were. They just didn't turn into dinosaurs yet. And somehow
they said in Step Brothers, you need to find your dinosaur. And they did that. Exactly. Canadians didn't have high hopes for. Senators. I'm loving this Michael Andlauer guy. Their owner, he's like my first star of the season so far. That guy is freaking hilarious. He's shooting from the hip.
Yeah. Just might take a pick from me. I wasn't there for that. Get out of here, folks. And the Panthers are kind of riding the momentum off what they did last year. But the biggest surprise, I guess, would be that I thought the Leafs would be a little more like I didn't think that we were gonna have to do galvanizing talk as early in the season as we have, and I've used the word galvanize like 100 times for them.
Well, it's the only word that can be used for them.
Like if they score a goal, it's like, all right, fine, this is it. They're clicking. All right, they're good now. Yeah, this was a galvanizing goal, and then they go and they lose the next game.
They found themselves. They've turned into that dinosaur who gets past the second round now. Quick break in the action to tell you about our delicious friends over at HelloFresh. With HelloFresh, you get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients and seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit. A crazy schedule can make it easy to fall back into your dinner time recipe rut. But keep mealtime exciting with over 40 recipes to choose from every week. There's always something delicious to discover with HelloFresh. Turn to HelloFresh Market for yummy add-ons and enjoy the season's limited time fall flavors lineup. It's that time of year, right? Things get you in the mood, like apple cider cake with caramel sauce. All the ingredients come fresh, from the crushed tomatoes to the Italian chicken sausage mix to the Parmesan cheese. It's delicious, and I feel like a chef when I'm doing it. What's better than that? And this is a busy time of year for me with hockey starting up. I don't always have a ton of time, so this recipe makes it quick to enjoy something amazing. So join in on the fun. Go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, go to HelloFresh.com/50Bruins and use code 50Bruins for 50% off plus free shipping. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Now, back to the show. I want to touch on sort of the younger guys on this team and how they've performed in your eyes. Obviously, Beecher stepped up in the fourth line center role and has stuck there. Patra now playing with Heinen and DeBrusk the past couple of games. He's been, I mean, you could honestly make a case right now that they have 2 second lines, feels like. I mean, just the way that they're rolling. And then obviously you have Lowry coming in on the back end the past couple games, the past 6 games. What have you thought of the younger guys on this team and how they've sort of added to the interest level in this Bruins team?
Well, I know everyone is a pothead, and it's hard not to be.
It's
exciting
true.
that they have a good young center. I'm also a Beach boy, though. I never held it against Johnny Beecher that Don Sweeney seemingly went on like NHL draft prospects.com, sorted by height, checked that they were American, and then drafted Johnny Beecher.
Check the speed level, like in NHL 24. You know, what's
Right.
the speed? 95. Oh, he's ours.
Is he tall? Is he American? Stop asking questions. They said he's tall and he's American. We're taking him. Johnny Beecher's American, right? He went to Michigan.
Is?
Gotta be.
He's from New York.
Oh, yeah, and
He's
he
from
played,
New York.
Yeah, right. And he played
at
in,
Salisbury.
Yes. As I was saying that, I was like, I know for sure he's tall. I hope that I'm not accidentally ascribing nationalities to him that are incorrect. But
No, he is. He is American.
so I've rooted for him because I think that there was a lot of thought that maybe he'd be an AHL guy. And it's like with Frederick, his pick turned some heads when they used a first-round pick on him. But I love Trent Frederick as a player. I think that he's hilarious, too, if you ever watch any of his mic'd up stuff. But yeah, I like Beecher in his role. He's not going to be a top 6 guy, but whatever. He did score a nice goal. I don't know if this counts as a young guy conversation, but Lauko is the greatest. He's hilarious, but also like a good bottom 6 player. Lowry, I kind of hear both sides of the argument of like, you know, maybe he's going to need some real seasoning at some point, but still, even that you can call up a defenseman with size and speed who shows it right away, they've for sure got something there.
That's the big thing. Like, we've touched on Patra and Beecher a lot on this, so I won't go too in depth on them. But with Lowry, it's interesting because, like, I think, you know, the size, the puck moving abilities, the offensive abilities are impressive as hell. And I think he 100% is going to be a steady NHL defenseman at the very least in his career. But, you know, you look at through 6 games, the analytics, right? These, you know, the advanced analytics of kind of show, and this is supported by the eye test, he's having a tougher time in the defensive zone. And I think that's where, you know, you mentioned like the seasoning. They're going to have a decision when Grzelcyk comes back. And I think, you know, a lot of people want to immediately ship Grzelcyk out of town. You know, Lowry, come on in, you know, Grzelcyk can go. To me, you want depth on the back end come the playoffs. I just think that's a big thing. And again, I've said this on the podcast before. If someone comes along and offers you a 2nd-round pick for Grzelcyk, sure, right? You want to get value for him, but you don't want to just dump him to dump him. That's one. But 2, I mean, you know, you just look at, I think Lowry right now in his 6 games is either number 1 or like top 5 in offensive zone faceoff starts and offensive zone shift starts. And he's constantly outchanced. And the analytic, you know, the expected goals, all that, I know it's not interesting for a podcast. He's among the worst on the team and stuff like that. And again, it's not everything, but it does show a sign. 6 games is a solid sample of, you know, and I think this is what the Bruins are going to have to face. Does he need more time in Providence working on the defensive game, right? And I think that's their big thing they're going to have to face. I know a lot of people are immediately like, Lowry's got to be here. Lowry's got to be here. And I want Lowry up here too. I think he's awesome. But I do wonder, and I think come the playoffs, let's say they did trade Grzelcyk, and let's say Lowry did stick in the top 6. You know, I know he's a first-year player, but is it suddenly a worry that, hey, you're going to be deep in a series against, you know, a hard grinding team, and you're going to have to, you know, shorten the bench every time in the 3rd? I don't know. So I think, to me, like, that's where I do entertain the idea of, hey, if he went back down to Providence, it might not be the worst thing for him.
If there's a hockey trade you can make with Grzelcyk and you think that you're like a real contender and there's a piece that you need offensively and you could trade him for that, have a team retain, and you can get a star player and it's a deal involving Grzelcyk, I don't know how plausible that is, but if there's a hockey trade to be made there, then sure, you can talk yourself into taking the risk on the back end and say,
yes,
we'll just hope the young
going to
kids
get you
do
a
it and we're
star.
I think that that's pretty unlikely, and I think you think that's pretty unlikely. So
Yes.
That's the scenario under which I say, yeah, fine, just trade Grzelcyk and count on the kid. It's a big risk when you do that. I don't think that that's the course that Don Sweeney would take. I think that he likes to make sure he's got his bases covered, and the way that you do that is keep that depth on the back end.
To me, that's sort of the answer. And the other thing is, like, they need to, at some point, get draft picks. They have to. This team needs picks, I think, in the future. Oh, yeah. And, you know, again, you don't have a lot of pieces on this roster that are going to net picks. Jake DeBrusk certainly would. Matt Grzelcyk might. But I don't know that they're going to be adding a lot at this deadline. I think I said the same thing last year. But then they were so freaking good, and it was clearly Bergeron's, potentially Bergeron's last year, that it was obvious that you had to make moves. Now, I feel this way this year of, if they did nothing at the deadline and just let it ride and not give up more future assets, not giving up a guy like Lysell and potentially selling low on him and all these different things, I'm fine with that. Like, you've got your team, you've got your goalies, you've got a strong defense, you have a little bit of depth up front, you're good enough. Go for it, but don't give up, future assets. If Grzelcyk can get you, if Grzelcyk could get you a top 6 winger, maybe you do it. But I agree with you. I think you have to have the bases covered and you have to have depth, because I don't know how much they're really going to be able to do at the deadline this year.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if they went further into, it would have to be next year's draft picks, because they've really been kind of cleaning themselves out this year and last year, which, as you said, probably not what they imagined they'd be doing, but you were in a situation where you had to do it. You knew that you were going to be paying the piper this year anyway with those, the Bergeron and Krejci contracts. I'm glad they brought Bergeron and Krejci back, but I remember the conversation at the time. People were like, man, you got Bergeron to come back for $1.5 million or whatever. And I was like, were you guys not there for like a minute ago with the Jerome McGinley thing? Like, this is they're not giving him $1 million or $1.5 million, whatever it is. Like, they're giving him real money, which is what he should cost. But like, please don't act like this isn't a big risk. And they took that risk. I think clearly with the season they had, it was a risk worth taking, but this is the year where they have to pay for it. And if they keep kicking the can down the road, then once the time comes when they finally do drop off a little bit, maybe a little more than a little bit, you don't want to have no draft picks and you don't want to be screwed salary cap wise. So I think that you are right in that this year, unless you find some hockey trade, you are not doing things that are going to burn you down the road. And I think the players on this team probably understand that.
Do you trade Jake DeBrusk?
Yeah, I love Jake DeBrusk, but he's not untouchable. If you're getting something that, I don't know, like if there's a Jake DeBrusk version of the Pavel Zacha trade, something like that, where you could trade somebody that might not be around too much longer, turn him into something that you could see if he can last a while. Yeah, something like that.
I love that. I would rather deal him for a first-round pick. And I know you still want to contend this year. And by the way, I don't know, if he continues to go on this sort of slump, I don't know if that gets you a first-round pick.
Right.
So that's like another thing to consider. But to me, like, I want picks. I want to stock up for the future a bit. And I know that doesn't help this year. It doesn't move the needle. He would be missed on the penalty kill too. Like that's another element of like, it's not just a production element. You're missing, he's a fairly good defensive forward now. So, and I love his compete and I like the way he plays. It just, sometimes the production isn't there. And again, if you can turn him into a first or, some guy, something like that, I'd be okay with that. I would. And I know it would hurt them this year, but I think you're right. Like, at some point, and you're seeing now, the younger players stepping in. Patra is a godsend, right? Lowry is clearly going to be something at the NHL level, so you're going to have a top 4 within the next, 24 months full-time of Lowry, McAvoy, Lindholm, Carlo. That's a great top 4. And up front, you also have Beecher stepping in a 4th-line role, but you do have to keep those younger guys. You do have to keep prospects coming through. I don't know who's in the prospect pool right now, aside from like Lysell that would come up and make an impact. So I think if you can get a legit thing like that for DeBrusk, it's hard not to take that. But I also agree, if you could do a Zacha-like trade there, then that's great. What's the cap you would sign him at per year?
Oh, DeBrusque. What is he at 4.5 now?
I can check because I don't have it off the top. I don't want to mess it up.
Let me see.
To me, so he signed a 2-year, $8 million deal with the Bruins on March 2022. So he's $4 million right now.
I mean, he's probably going to get 5.25, something like that. Like, I mean, depending on term, would be my ballpark.
Over the offseason, I think Connor and I both were like, we had a episode where we talked about that in depth, and I think we both said like 5.5, 6 potentially coming off of last year. Like,
right.
There's a team could give him I think a team could, like, if he hits free agency, I think a team could give him a lot, because that's a potential 30 goal guy, like plays hard, like all those things, can play in his own zone too. Like, I wonder there, like what
Flames,
the market would be like for him.
Like Western Conference team, Western Canada, that needs people willing to play for their team, which kind of seems like the Flame situation right now. Like, I don't know, like if they're able to figure out something with some of the guys on their roster who don't want to be there, maybe, but I don't know. I can't forecast that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe he does get like 5.5, and I don't think the Bruins would be in the position to pay that.
Yeah, I mean, the cap will go up, and hopefully will go up in future years too. So if they did pay that, it would look maybe cheaper over time. But even then, I think there are other areas of your roster that you want to focus on.
You got to give JVR a big extension. So you got to remember his cap number is going to go up to like 11.
Give him the max. Make him the highest paid player in the league, I think.
That's it.
But anyways, DJ, this has been fun. It's been great to rekindle you being on Bruins beat and talking bees, and you must enjoy it, because I was gonna say, because not just because of me being here, but also just on What Chaos. I know you love talking about national stuff, but Bruins is your bread and butter, so I think it's nice for you to dive into Bruins stuff.
It's something. It's very nice of you to suggest I have a bread and butter, so I'll take that. We do talk Bruins quite a bit, maybe even more than we should, but it's a fun time.
I know. Aside from What Chaos, is there anything else you'd like to plug? Anything else you got going on that people should keep an eye out for?
I mean, I haven't even been sleeping. What Chaos has taken up so much of our energy as we get it going. Eventually, it's going to hit cruising altitude, and we're going to level out, and we'll be able to live normal lives. But just getting this all going has taken up a ton of energy. If you want to follow my personal YouTube page, I suppose you could do that. It's where I toss some of my non-hockey things, but I'd say that mainly the thing that I would plug is for the listeners and viewers to have a lovely day.
Well, I like that too. I agree with you on that. So DJ, it's been a pleasure as always. You'll be on again throughout the year, Kevin. Of course. And that's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. You Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.